Hello. At the end of a long day for me. How's it going?
Hello,
Welcome to
very good.
Peter,
Welcome back. Episode 4.
episode 4. And as we discussed last time, I'm not going to say anything except, hey, hello. with,
Very good. Keep it crisp.
with
So, what are we doing today?
Gujuland,
Oh, nice. Your hometown.
my hometown. Actually, Hardik and Krunal and I played together. So, my home buddy as well.
What do you mean play together? Like he was playing in the TV and you were playing outside? Or what do you mean play together?
Man, back then he was like a 4 foot nothing opener who used to wear a West Indian helmet and come and defend balls. He was one of the best defenders of the balls. So
But he had the West Indian, you know,
helmet. Yeah,
obsession since he was a kid.
he was actually. And surprisingly, everyone else used to get these blue fancy helmets, and he used to get the maroon West Indian helmet open for our under 14 team and come and defend in a 50 over game.
I think that's where now you see where Hardik got his batting from. I think he looked at his brother and he's like, I don't want to do any of this.
So, but well, yes, diving into the Gujarat Titans and their first ever IPL season.
Yes. So what have we got here? What do you think?
We've got Ashish Nehra, who I don't know how he became a coach. Gary Kirsten, who's a brilliant mentor and a decent scout. And then Hardik Pandya, who's captaining, who just gave an interview yesterday saying he wants to be the next MSD.
I think he's. I think with his personality, I think he's more likely to become the next MSG. Uh, I think it's okay. I think even that's good enough.
You mean both off spin, leg spin, everything? Yeah, but he's as
The all-round
close to
package.
as it would get to MSG because he's probably the best all-rounder that India has at the moment, if given
If
his
he's fully fit.
fitness. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, they paid a whooping 15 crore, is it?
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that is 15 crore for him and 15 for Rashid. That's almost, I think, almost half the purse gone,
Yeah.
close to half the purse gone. So GT really believes that these guys can do it for them, and given their abilities, I think, say Rashid, as you've mentioned time and again as well, he makes it a 16 over game, 4 overs max 30 on a bad day, and at least a wicket or two. So
Yeah.
it's a killer, and SRH didn't retain him, and I guess you'll get.
Yeah. I'm surprised.
But yeah, Hardik, Rashid, and Shubman Gill, I think brilliant retentions or whatever equivalent of new teams they want to call it. And they've sort of tried to build a culture with all rounders. On another day, I would have called them bits and pieces players, but I don't want to be labeled as a Manjrekar on a new. But they've built a team around certain people such as those. But one very interesting thing that I feel I want to point out before we get right into the 11 is they've, if you look at their Indian rookies, where you would have seen most teams have a bunch of those 20 lakh, 30 lakh buys, these guys have gone all out on some
Yeah.
very well scouted rookies. And
Yeah.
some might think that they might have mistaken Yash Dayal as Yash Dhul and paid 3.2 crores, but not quite. He's actually a pretty decent left armer. He's got an average of what I think 22-ish and bowls at 140. He's been touted as the next Irfan Pathan in terms of his shape. So
Interesting.
he's him as well as Sai Kishore and Sai Sudarshan. These are TNPL stars. So they've really thought through their rookies. So they've got some
Yeah.
ground who's giving them reports, and they've gone for rookies that were actually sought out for by other teams as well. So that's a good sign. Abhinav
Yes.
showed his ability in the first game, and he's got an interesting story, something similar to what you saw with Kohli when he was coming about, where they said that he played a game the next day after his father passed away. So early on, Abhinav Manohar was hit on the head, and he passed out, went to hospital, and next day he batted and helped
Wow.
his team win in the under 14 or under 16 category. So some strong characters, maybe long-term prospects for GT, and maybe the team will come about on these players. I'll get to Gurbaz later, I think, as soon as we get to the 11. So Iyer, I think you've been a big fan of Gurbaz as well, and you mentioned this when we were starting off, saying it might be a blessing in disguise, right?
Yeah.
So given that Jason Roy is,
I,
yeah, sorry.
no, I think because I'm a bit suspicious of Matthew Wade.
Mm-hmm.
I think he sort of struggles for pace when it comes to spin. I mean, even in the first game, I think we saw him hit like a run a ball-ish 30, right? So I think at some point they might want to swap that, Matthew Wade style for someone maybe like Gurbaz, who's a little more attacking. He's sort of young, a bit more innovative, or they can go down the route of Saha as well, who's sort of shown to play those sort of cameos, right? Because I think they will need some more power in the top. Vijay Shankar is steady guy at number 3, but I think it's a bit, I'm interesting choice to have him sort of be the focal point of your batting, which means Hardik really has to stand up. David Miller, sort of another guy who's sort of blown hot, blown cold in the IPL. So yeah, I think but anyway, let's get to it when we go through the 11. But it is a bit of I think they will need batting backup at some point. My feeling.
Exactly. So it's an interesting pick where I feel there have been some very good buys, but at the same time, they've sort of concentrated a lot on a certain area, forgetting the of the team. So they've got amazing opener and opening options. And here again, like if Wade doesn't do well as an opener, they can route in a Saha, maybe get Wade down the order instead of Miller. And we saw Wade finish the game in the semi-finals against Pakistan. So be given a finisher role. There's Gurbaz, who's an exciting prospect. He had an amazing tour in Bangladesh, where Afghanistan had a very successful tour, and he's been touted as one of the stars of tomorrow from his under 19 days.
Yeah, and quite a few people have sort of called him out. So
exactly,
keen to see what he has.
And then, of course, you've got an anchor in Shubman Gill who's going to give you a 30, 40, 50 consistently, except for the 0 that he scored in his first game. But he'll give you probably a 25, 30 average season. So 120 strike rate. So that's not bad, because GT does need 1 or 2 anchors. Given their second anchor is Vijay Shankar.
Yeah, I think they would. And they're also a bit light on pace at the top of the innings. I feel like Wade, Gill, and Vijay Shankar are all similar kind of players.
Yeah. So
who'll average between 20 and 30 and strike at 120.
Right. Exactly. So to your point, I think Saha could be utilized well. Gurbaz could be utilized well. But then the middle order is just like, I don't know what's happening, man. They've got Vijay Shankar as an anchor, and there is actually no replacement at the moment.
There is none.
Which is scary, because Vijay Shankar himself was a replacement for a bunch of other people. And as a 3-dimensional player, he's, I don't know, shown no more than a dimension and a half. And
I think he's struggled in the IPL.
Exactly. And Hardik Pandya is the anchor of this team, which scares me, because I don't think Hardik Pandya would be best suited for an anchor role. But
no, but Hardik is not the way the team is set up. I don't think Hardik can actually play as an anchor, because if all goes well, look at this team, right? I mean, you go with Gill, Wade, and Shankar in the top. if everything goes well, they're going to be 10 overs 60 for 3, or 10 overs 70 for 3, because they will all hit 20 to 30 runs and around 120 strike rate, right? So that's going to be 10 overs 70 for 3 when these guys get out. And then you don't need another anchor. You're likely to need a pickup in your pace after that. So Hardik is going to have to come in and score pretty much. He's not going to have to anchor, but he's going to have to get going pretty soon, because they don't have much power after that. I mean, they have good names like Miller on paper, but yeah, it is a bit. They haven't done. Their history hasn't been too great.
So Abhinav, Manohar, Tewatia, and Miller, amongst them, I would say they can get that next 10 overs to be 50 or 100. But this is where I feel you could play around with it. And this is where I think GT have done well. I don't know if they'll utilize it. So Miller hasn't scored at more than 130, 140 in the last 3 seasons of IPL, which gives you a score of, say, 150, 160 on paper, if that is what your finish is going to look like.
Yeah.
So I would probably play around in this way, where I push Miller to number 4 and say, okay, Hardik, you come only when the number of overs are, say, about
7, 8.
Yeah, 7, 8 to go. And so Miller would probably come in at number 4, Hardik at 5, followed by Manohar, Tewatia. And then if Tewatia doesn't work well, you
have Rashid.
You get in a Dominic Drakes and remove Wade for a Saha. So these are quite interesting combinations that they've got. And I feel this team, because we've seen the Miller Tewatia finisher role fail at RR.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of worked the other day, but I would be very skeptical if you want to. I mean, these are the first games, right? Like, a lot of the teams are finding their feet.
True.
And I wouldn't read too much into the fact that they won the first game. I think a lot of things went well for them in that game, and I don't see that happening for them every single time.
True, exactly. The other thing very similar in the thought process is similar to the openers that they've got, very similar brand of openers. They've got very unidimensional fast bowlers. So we've got Lockie Ferguson, Alzari Joseph, and Varun Aaron. All hit the deck, fast bowlers.
Yeah.
Very, very delicate in terms of fitness. And
even Shami isn't the most fittest guy. I mean, off late, his sort of age is catching up. So he's not in his prime from a fitness perspective.
Exactly. And these guys, Ferguson, Joseph, and Aaron, on their day could give a 40-50 run 4 overs.
Yes.
So I think they were lucky Shami got them the 3 wickets in the first game. But the day Shami doesn't do well.
Yes, exactly.
Because of Rashid Khan, they're going to go for 130, 140 with the 4 fast bowlers.
I mean, they literally had to cash in 2 of their silver bullets, Tewatia hitting a 50, chasing a score down. It probably happens like twice a season in the last 3 years. It's not a regular thing. And Shami taking that sort of 3 wickets burst with the new ball happens like 2 or 3 times in a season at max.
Exactly.
So, if you look at sort of the consistency of events occurring, like, every player every player wins you in a certain number of games in a season. Someone like a Surya Kumar wins you more than someone like, say, Shami or else. So they've already seemed to cash in 2 of their silver bullets in just the first game. And that's what it took for them to win that game. At some point, the law of averages are going to catch up. And I feel that they're going to really struggle, this team, because they don't have batting backup and they don't have bowling backup.
Exactly. So
I don't know I'm trying to go to the left and see who are their players. I mean, what have they actually done? You've got Jayant Yadav as another guy, Indian pro. You've got Pradeep Sangwan. I thought he stopped playing cricket. I mean, I was very surprised. The funny thing about...
Stopped playing cricket.
Weirdly, Gujarat seems to be this team that has picked a lot of these experienced Indian players whose career is either over or hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, So, technically, like Tewatia, Ridhiman Saha, Jayant Yadav, Vijay Shankar, Varun Aaron, Pradeep Sangwan. I mean, they're not all the same in terms of what they've achieved. Saha's been like different, but they're all sort of similar experienced Indian players past their prime, or who never really, made it to the big stage. So that is a bit of a risky formula to go in with, because that might work if you have a very good international sort of roster to back it up. But apart from Rashid and say Loki, the international picks are also very sort of the same. They're just the same Indian picks with the same character. I mean, the guys whose careers could have gone in one way but never really went. I mean, David Miller, Matthew Wade, none of these guys have really achieved their true potential. Alzari Joseph is young, but I don't see them, being match winners yet.
Maybe that's the aspect of MSG's captaincy that Hardik took up, saying,
yes,
I
think, well, he's got the first half covered. That's the tough part. Now the easy bit is there. Just get them to do like what CSK did. That's easy. That's the easy part. I'm pretty sure he's going to make it.
And of course, Stephen Fleming is the same as Ashish Nehra. Master
tactician. Left-handed, pretty much calm and I did see an interview of Ashish Nehra after the auction, and he was sort of interviewing, and he was very happy. So, but he was on Cricket Buzz, and they were asking about the auction. He seemed very happy, but nobody else was sort of agreeing with him. Even in the panel there,
Kirsten was also quite satisfied, and Kirsten actually, just to give you an idea, Kirsten actually talked about these 3 picks, saying we are very happy to be like, this is a lot of money. This is 10 crores almost.
Yeah.
On their 8.8 crores.
No, I definitely think those 3 picks are good. Like all of the first 3 could turn out to be sort of serious picks at the end of the season or in the end of a couple of seasons. But that formula normally works if you can, you have these excited talents in the middle of a solid core. I mean, that's what they seem to have forgotten. I mean, Mumbai had a solid core, and then they would bring in like a Chahar or a Bumrah or someone, Bumrah back then. They could sort of the core would absorb the pressure, and these guys could perform, The problem with having just young Indian players without a core sort of makes you look like Sunrisers, which has basically been Sunrisers' problem in the last 4 years, that they've had this 5 or 6 Indian players, Abhishek Sharma, Priyam Garg, Abdul Samad, Umran Malik, all very exciting young Indian talents. But what was missing was that core. So you basically relied on these Indian rookies, and oftentimes the pressure got to them.
So I don't agree on the absolute core not being present, because you've got, I think, Gill, Pandya, and Khan form a reasonable enough core. I think, as you mentioned, they will take time to build up to, say, a level of Mumbai or league where they develop those players through. And again, as I think, if they would want a little more consistency from Miller, Tewatia, and Miller had killer 12, 13, 14 seasons of IPL 2013, 14, 15.
But that was very long back. Maybe
Punjab Kings. But the problem has been that ever since, he's been viewed as that 150, 200 type player. But he's given Rajasthan a few victories with a 130, 140 strike rate. So maybe
I think
sorry.
No, I'm saying I think he's been pigeonholed too much. Maybe he's been pigeonholed too much as a finisher.
Exactly.
And he can actually sort of play a bit of that anchor role, because he is kind of experienced now. He is quite senior. So he should be able to sort of absorb that pressure. And I suspect Vijay Shankar, as much as I hope he does well, I don't think he's going to be, able to carry a team through in the IPL as a number 3 batsman. I don't think he's there yet. So at some point, you would sort of need Miller to go up regardless. And, you're going to try to patch that with, I don't know, with Gurkeerat Maan or... But that's the problem, right? I think they don't have backups. Like, I think what Gujarat hasn't done well is, I agree with you that the parts of the core are present. But unlike other teams, I think they've splashed a lot of money for a few players So those 4 or 5 players are very solid. Like, they spent 15 each on Rashid and Hardik,
There.
10 on
Lockie.
Loki,
That's ridiculous.
9 on Tewatia, which I think was 8 crores too much, 8 on Shubman Gill, 6 on Shami. So what has happened there is they have then had only 1 or 2 crores per player on the other parts of the course. So they have 5 or 6 players who are really good, but they've had because they spend so much on each of them, the remaining 5 or 6 players are not very good. And even those 5 or 6 players who are very good, I don't think they work particularly well together. Like, in the sense that, I mean, they sort of like complement each other, but it's not, that unit is not there yet. I think they've mismanaged, the that balance has, I don't think they've got that balance right.
True. So exactly, they're very heavy on the top, heavy on the bottom in a way.
Yeah.
They've got depth in the top, depth on the bottom, but nothing really in the middle.
Yeah, I agree.
So
because they've got a decent 12 overs in that, between Rashid, Shami, and Ferguson. I would say 9 out of 10 times you'll get a good 12 overs. I know Ferguson can be expensive, but he's generally quite good. Problem is,
typically,
sorry,
and a wicket taker typically. So that's
and a wicket taker. But then I think there are some serious issues on the other 8 overs, right? So they got to squeeze that other 8 between Vijay Shankar, Tewatia, Varun Aaron,
Hardik,
and Hardik. And all of these guys are not exactly airtight. So I think they will sort of, struggle in that instance. Because if the really good teams will see out the 12 and go after the 8.
Yes. No, absolutely. So I think they've gone for options versus quality. This is what they've probably looked at, where they're thinking that quality is covered with the retentions. And then they've gone for these players who can be made, can be given that new boost of confidence. And who knows, Gary Kirsten might do something. But I'm not too sure about them making the playoffs this first season. Again, they might, but so yeah, I think they don't have depth in the squad. So
I'm going to actually maybe stick my neck out here and say that I think they will probably end up in the bottom end of this table. There is going to be a competition between them and SRH. I see that happening for the 10th spot. Because in a 10-team competition, I mean, remember, this is a 10-team IPL. It's a very long. I mean, I struggle to see how. I mean, they have a machine that needs a lot of moving parts to work for them to succeed. I struggle to see how that's going to work in a 14-game league when the fundamentals are not strong. So, if they do qualify, and if they prove me wrong, absolutely. I mean, that you always live for those stories. But the way things stand, I'm really struggling. I mean, to see how they don't end up in the bottom half of the table.
So the only reason that I would differ, not just that I'm sitting in Vadodara, is
of course, that's got nothing to do with it.
I feel a new team, both, say, if I had to compare LSG and GT, I am of the opinion that I think GT might have a better season than LSG.
So, bold call.
Yeah, I know LSG has a much, much, much better team. I feel LSG has one of the best teams in the tournament.
On paper.
Yes. But their leadership might, according to me, again, this is something, I'm not a big fan of Hardik Pandya either, but their leadership might be counterproductive, but maybe early days to call it. I could be biting my tongue.
Yeah. I think Hardik can at least seems to be the guy who can rally the troops a little bit when the chips are down. KL Rahul, whenever the camera has always panned on him, I always feel like he's really grumpy and really depressed. I've never really seen him smile. I mean, I don't know about you, but whenever I picture KL Rahul in my head, when he's batting, but when the camera is panned to him, it's always as if.
Does it have?
So I don't know. He doesn't.
coach Gambhir, wo bhi Gambhir, ye bhi Gambhir.
Ye bhi Gambhir, exactly. Uh, anyways.
Yes. So yeah, just probably to get a rating from you, I get what you're saying about the
Yeah.
playoff chances. But if you had to give this team or just pitch it against LSG, SRH, and PBKS, who I'm expecting these four to be in the bottom four.
So I think, SRH definitely, I think these guys can beat SRH. I mean, SRH has just got we'll come to it, but they have a whole list of problems. PBKS, I know they won the first game, but they were quite lucky. I mean, Odin Smith, got dropped. Shahrukh was dropped. So again, a lot of luck went their way in that game. PBKS also has a lot of things that need to work for them in order to win. When GT and PBKS play together, I think more than who the most skilled team is, I think on that day, who the more luckier team is going to get through. Just because, these teams are those who rely a lot on that sort of luck going their way. And what was the other team you mentioned? The fourth one?
LSG.
LSG, I think technically I'm still sort of bullish on them. It can all unravel very quickly, but at least on paper, they have a very good team. They've got some really quality players there. So I think I'm quite positive. I know they lost the first game to Gujarat, but the first 2-3 games, most franchises are trying to find their feet. So I think I would definitely rate it as LSG among the top of those four names, and then maybe PBKS, then GT, and then SRH.
Okay.
In that order.
Cool. I think we've got a little.
Yeah.
But I think once we cover them mid-season, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, let's see how they. Yeah, I'm quite keen to see how they go.
Awesome, Iyer. Thanks.
Perfect.
And
thank you. Let's see you again next time.